What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Next Pats podcast. I'm Phil Perry. So much to get to on today's podcast. We are reacting to the Stefon Diggs release and what the Patriots will do moving forward. Why, in my opinion, this was the right move. But now the Patriots have to act and have to act aggressively. We'll get to some details there. We're also talking team building with two of our favorites from the Check the Mic podcast and the 33rd team, Steve Palazzolo and Sam Monson. We're actually talking to them separately. We wanted to get their separate takes. Those guys are attached at the hip, it feels like, and you can hear all their combined takes on their podcast. So we bring them onto ours. We have separate one-on-one conversations. They're both tremendous. They both have fresh ideas for the Patriots as they embark on the new league year and the start of free agency. We actually talked to them in Indianapolis, so you're going to hear us talk about things like what should the Patriots do with Stefon Diggs? And I think the insight that these guys share with us is still something that is worthy of your attention. So we're going to get those entire conversations. We're going to hear from Steve Palazzolo, for example, describe what the Patriots should do if and when they part with Stefon Diggs. He's going to give you one draft name that he really loves, and he and I are of a similar mind when it comes to that. You're going to hear Sam Monson talk about Christian Gonzalez. Boy, massive trade in the NFL. You just saw Trent McDuffie go from Kansas City to L.A. for a huge, huge haul. That make anybody think that maybe, just maybe, the Patriots should think about dealing their own top defensive back? I am not one of those. I believe the Patriots should sign Christian Gonzalez and keep him here long term. It's exactly what you want. You drafted the guy. He's played great. You should be trying to keep him here for the long haul. But what does Sam Monson think? So some great discussions there with two really, really bright guys. But first, let's start with our reaction to the Stefon Diggs release. In my opinion, this is the right move, and I'll tell you why. After having spoken to a number of different evaluators in Indianapolis, executives, scouts, coaches, the consensus was that Diggs would not be back on the salary that he was set to make in 2026. And when you have these conversations, does the cap come up? Yes, it comes up. To me, cash is the more significant number. He was set to make over $20 million, almost $21 million in base salary. And that's not an exorbitant number for a guy who just gave you a 1,000-yard season. The market has changed. 20 million, doesn't buy you what it used to. And so at that position in 2026, $20 million for a guy that you're going to depend on to move the chains for you, not the worst thing in the world. But he's about to be 33 years old, and as one general manager told me, he's a one-year guy at this stage of his career. Doesn't mean he couldn't still have something left in the tank. Doesn't mean he won't go somewhere next year and be productive, but he's the kind of guy you bring in to help get your program off the ground, and you lean on him, and you get to wherever you get to with him, and you hope it goes great, and it went as well as it could have gone for the New England Patriots, in my opinion, in 2025 with Diggs. But you don't build around him. You don't make him a foundational piece because of where he's at in his career. And quite frankly, the Patriots need to upgrade there. As good as his numbers were, he disappeared in the postseason, didn't crack 40 yards in any of their 4 postseason games. And you need someone for Drake Maye who can uncover in any situation. Against tight man coverage, double teams at times, you need the type of true number one or something that more closely approximates a number one than what Diggs was giving you last year, which is a very reliable, dependable, interior, zone-sitting slot receiver. So they need to upgrade there. Now they have freed up $20 million in cash to go spend either at that receiver position or somewhere else. So to me, this is the right move, but in order for you to capitalize on making the right move, you now have to go and find the next guy. And I think, again, when you talk about the initial step here of walking away from Diggs, one of the reasons that I find it a refreshing move in some ways on the Patriots' part is that it does show some level of assertiveness, of aggressiveness when it comes to your team building process. And when I say that, I mean, on paper, if you were to keep Stefon Diggs around, that would look pretty good. You could do it well into the offseason. You could still have your eyes out for guys who might shake free, maybe trade possibilities. You could be looking in the draft for the next one. But all the while, you know you've got Stefon Diggs and that 1,000-yard receiving number from 2025 on your books, and it looks good on paper. But if you're being honest with yourselves, you know you needed more. And you know there is some level of likelihood that he's not giving you what he gave you last season, or that he's not even on the field as much as he was last season. And I know he's another year removed from that knee injury, and so who knows? Maybe he'll play 17 games and He'll have another 1,000-yard season, 100 catches next year. Impossible for me to say. But I think you're making the aggressive and assertive roster choice here by forcing yourselves to go get something else. Now I think it becomes imperative that you upgrade. And that's the approach you should be taking if you're the New England Patriots. If he was just there, it would be nice. It's a fallback. It's safe, right? Now this is forced growth that you're putting yourselves through. And you freed up that cash, and so whether it's to trade for A.J. Brown or it's to sign Alec Pierce or it's to do something else, you are now making yourselves uncomfortable to a degree in order that you can, down the line, and if you're the Patriots, you hope it's soon down the line, improve one of the most important position groups on your team. So now what do they do that Diggs is gone? To me, option number one, and I'll rank them for you, because who doesn't love a good ranking? Option number one should be Alec Pierce. 26 years old, one of the best and most efficient deep threats in football, great hands, near the top of the league in terms of converting deep targets into catches, very few drops over the course of the last couple years. And think about the quarterbacks he has been seeing those deep targets from over the course of his career. You're talking about Riley Leonard. You're talking about Phillip Rivers. You're talking about Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones, Joe Flacco. Not exactly a murderer's row, ladies and gentlemen. So this is one of the rare opportunities, in my opinion, in free agency where you could actually get a guy and you're not buying high, so to speak, right? You could actually project out improvement from a statistical standpoint, from a production standpoint, based on the quarterbacks he has been working with and based on the quarterback that he would be working with here in New England. So 47 catches, 1,000 yards last year. Good numbers, not necessarily going to blow you away. And I'm not sure, quite frankly, I'm not sure he's a true, quote-unquote, number one. Because to me, he's your outside-the-numbers guy. You're throwing it to him down the field. You're running him on comebacks. You're running him on the occasional dig, but posts, fades down the field. And that's going to have a ton of value with Drake Maye. Is he a true number one? Like you throw it up to him in any situation, he'll be paid like one. I'm not sure he's that guy, but I'd rather have him than Stefon Diggs. I'd rather have him than A.J. Brown. He only costs money, and it might be quite a pretty penny, but it's only money. A.J. Brown, meanwhile, he would be my number two option. He's going to cost you picks, and there's a trade that just went down as we're recording here. DJ Moore to the Bills. It sounds like it's essentially a second-round pick that the Bills are giving up to acquire Moore. They're also getting a fifth-rounder back from Chicago, but let's say it's essentially the value of a second-round pick. Number one, okay, I think that's actually pretty good for the Patriots because Jonathan Jones from CBS does a great job. Actually had looked at the Patriots as a potential landing spot for DJ Moore if he was going to be traded. I didn't love that fit. DJ Moore didn't really mesh well with the young quarterback in Chicago. He has had a lot of questions about his effort on the field. I don't think that would mesh with Mike Vrabel. So I think in that sense, this is good for the Patriots that they aren't forced to try to go get a guy like DJ Moore because they struck out elsewhere. That's number one. Number two, this might take the Bills out of the veteran receiver market, whether it's A.J. Brown or paying for Alec Pierce. And to me, that's significant, guys, because outside of Josh Allen, is there another quarterback in the NFL, that you'd certainly rather work with than Drake Maye? Yeah, maybe you put Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, but when we're talking about these teams that are looking for maybe the same kind of receiver that the Patriots are, Josh Allen you probably put at the top of the list, and then Drake Maye somewhere soon thereafter. Maybe you'd put Lamar Jackson just because of his track record ahead of Drake Maye. He's missed time of late. I don't know how that passing game is going to look moving forward, but be that as it may, if the Bills are removed from the equation, to me, now you are near the top of the list of quarterback teams that veteran receivers want to work with. That's a good thing. What might not be great for the Patriots when it comes to this trade is a second-round pick for DJ Moore means what for A.J. Brown? What is the realistic return for A.J. Brown now? Reportedly, the Eagles are seeking a first and a second-round pick. I don't think that's going to happen. But if DJ Moore got a second, A.J. Brown, who's the same age, has to be worth a first, right? Or you're talking a second and a future second, or you're talking a second and a third. And that to me is relatively rich. It might be a little too rich for the New England Patriots, as much as Mike Vrabel likes A.J. Brown, and as much as I think A.J. Brown will work in this offense with Drake Maye. That to me would be option two, but because of the draft capital going away, I don't love it. If you're the Patriots, I think you should be trying to hold on to that number 31 overall pick and getting the Morgan Moses replacement of the future. Or maybe it's a young receiver to pair with somebody like Alec Pierce. Maybe it's a starting level edge rusher in a deep edge rushing class. That to me would be preferred over A.J. Brown. So I go Alec Pierce 1, A.J. Brown 2, and then I'm going 3. I'm going the draft. I'm not going Mike Evans. I'm not going anybody else in free agency. Is it Calvin Ridley? We could talk about a Brian Thomas trade. I'm not sure how realistic that is, but I would be looking at the draft. And I'd be looking at using that number 31 overall pick on whether it's Denzel Boston as an X, whether it's Omar Cooper as a Z. We're going to hear a little bit more about Omar Cooper very shortly in this podcast. Whether it's Casey Concepcion as an interior explosive playmaking threat. There are some real players there at the bottom of the first round at that receiver position. So that would be my third option. But I go Pierce, Brown, and then I'd be going to the draft. No matter which way they prioritize things, you can be sure the Patriots are prioritizing bringing in better weaponry for Drake Maye. They attacked that position again and again and again last offseason, and they struck out until they were able to land a deal with Stefon Diggs, but he was not their first, second, or third choice, right? Chris Godwin told them no. They were looking at somebody like a DK Metcalf and making a trade for him, but they were told, DK Metcalf, he ain't signing with you, so you're not going to want to trade what Seattle's going to require in a trade for DK Metcalf to only have the guy be there for a short stay. So they had a number of different avenues to attack. They couldn't make any of them work out, and I know at the time their thinking was, okay, fine. We will win, and people will want to play for us moving forward. Now, I don't think they knew that they were going to win as much as they did in 2025, but boy, did that premonition come to fruition. And now you're looking at a team that I think veteran players of all stripes, receivers, edge rushers, et cetera, would be looking at as a legitimate destination. All right, for more on the team building process, what the Patriots should be looking to do, let's fire these conversations up. These are from Indy, so these were done last week. So again, we're going to be talking a little bit about Diggs, a little bit about overall team building and what the Patriots' approach should be. Some very, very interesting names here that we're going to get to with both Steve Palazzolo, and then we'll play our interview with Sam Monson. And we will talk to you next time here on Next Pats with a lot of free agency news to throw at you. Very happy to have with us now on Next Pats, Steve Palazzolo, 33rd Team, Check the Mic podcast. Steve, thanks for being with us here in beautiful Indianapolis.
Of course. This is my favorite week of the year. This is like the big NFL reunion, a lot going on, so it's a big week.
There is a lot going on, and we need to ask you about what might be going on with the Patriots, because this is the week where we start to hear scuttlebutt on what they might be doing in free agency, what they might be doing with their own guys. And the biggest name among all of the potential checklist items for them to tend to this offseason is Stefon Diggs. Stefon Diggs, big base salary coming up in 2026. He's getting deeper into his 30s. He'll be further removed from the knee injury that he suffered in Houston. But if you're New England, you know you've got a young quarterback who trusted Stefon Diggs quite a bit this past season. What would you be doing with the veteran receiver?
I think I'm moving on at this point from Stefon Diggs. I think you say, thanks for what you did. You helped get our year 2 quarterback, moved him along, gave him some confidence. We saw that way back with Reggie Wayne helping Andrew Luck before he retired. There's a reason why Diggs has kind of run himself out of a few different cities as well. And there's a reason why the Houston Texans said, we'll just take 1 year of Stefon Diggs instead of multiple years. So I think it's probably time. And that's, it's a little scary in that, hey, how do you replace a guy who is a true number one, right? Gets open down the field, can win inside, win on the outside, and was a key player. But I think you have to probably move on at this point.
A pre-June 1 release saves them almost $17 million, according to Over the Cap, in terms of the cash you might be saving. He is due, or he is scheduled to have $6 million of his $20 million base salary for this upcoming season become fully guaranteed for injury on March 13th, which I believe is 2 or 3 days into the new league year. So if you're moving on, how are you rebuilding around Drake Maye? And are you looking at that offensive line first because of what happened in the Super Bowl? Are you looking at weapons and saying, boy, he needs more juice there? What are you doing if you're Elliott Wolf and Mike Vrabel?
So I would explore all the NFL-centric options. I know the A.J. Brown trade rumors and all those types of things. Explore all those options. You got to start there.
NFL-centric meaning not draft-centric.
Yeah,
okay.
As in like current NFL players. There's not a massive haul of free agent receivers, but there's a decent group. Again, not someone maybe at Diggs level, but explore the free agent market, explore the trade market. I think from an offensive line perspective, veterans, I think a guy like Isaac Seumalo coming from the Steelers as just a dependable left guard. You move Jared Wilson into center. So I think a veteran up front. And I think the draft could be nice in the back end of the first round for receiver.
Yeah, I look at the draft, and there's some interesting fits there. And I know there's one name in particular that you really like, that I really like, that I want to ask you about in a bit. But you mentioned Seumalo. There are a handful of guards that look like they'll be A, available, and B, have plenty of experience and could be helpful. What makes Seumalo an interesting guy for you?
He's always been a really good pass protector, going all the way back to college. He was playing a little bit of left tackle. He's just good in pass pro, and he's just been a good, dependable pro. And every year that I do my free agent work, I find those offensive linemen. Morgan Moses was my guy the last couple of years where I'm just like, listen, I know you want to get younger. I know you want to draft and develop players, but Morgan Moses, the last couple of years I kept saying, this guy will give you 2 or 3 years of dependable play at right tackle at a reasonable price. And he's good for every NFL team. Kevin Zeitler at right guard has been that guy the last couple of years. I think Seumalo probably falls into that bucket. Just veteran, you know what you're going to get, dependable play, and you don't have to spend $18 to $20 million as some of the younger guards were going for last year.
Morgan Moses gave them a really solid year at right tackle in 2025. Would you do it again? Would you run it back with Morgan Moses, or are you looking for, is there a cost-effective, dependable option in free agency, or would you be looking at the draft for that position? What are you doing if you're the Patriots?
I like bringing Moses back. I mean, my whole theory going into the draft is you get in there with as few needs as possible. So if you do say, hey, look, Morgan Moses is our right tackle, and listen, we saw what happened with Will Campbell last year. The number 4 overall pick is going to have some growing pains at times. So if you just go the draft route on the offensive line, it's a little bit riskier. You go dependable Morgan Moses, and if the right guy is there, late first or a developmental tackle in the second round, you do that, right? And you say, okay, now we're building for the future and we have our dependable starter. But if they can go into the draft with 5 starters they feel good about on the offensive line, that's the best way to go.
And they do have Ben Brown in the mix there, who they re-signed during the season, this past season. He started for them at guard before he started at center 2 years ago, and has given them some really valuable snaps. And so maybe between, Will Campbell, left tackle, Ben Brown, Jared Wilson, maybe it's Seumalo. I guess they could bring back Garrett Bradbury, but if you want to move Jared Wilson to that center spot, maybe you're moving on there, and then you bring back Owenu and Morgan Moses. That's 5 that you could lean on initially, and then you can go from there and
get your developmental offensive linemen beyond that, who don't have to step in and play. And that's been the issue the last couple of years when you have to force young players into the lineup.
You're so great about looking at the draft and looking at the guys that are coming up. Can I throw an offensive line question your way? Are there guys that you like that would be in that Patriots range? Because it does feel like tackle, and actually specifically right tackle, oddly, there's a number of different guys that could be available to them, whether it's first or second round, that might ultimately be starters.
The offensive tackles that come to mind right now in mock drafts who are getting drafted late in the first always tend to move up. I'm talking guys like Monroe Freeling from Georgia. You're starting to see him creep up higher and higher in some of the national mock drafts where he's going at 17 or maybe in the top 15 because he's going to be huge. He's going to measure well and test well here in Indianapolis, but he's a developmental type of prospect. I think he'd be a great developmental right tackle. Completely different body type from Will Campbell, but play right tackle. Caleb Lomu from Utah. This might scare Patriots fans a little bit, but he has some reps where he just gets beat.
Yeah.
Gets beat pretty cleanly, like Will did this year. But I think his potential's through the roof because he's just a redshirt sophomore. So that's why I'm saying if you can get the O-line intact, I think Lomu 2 years from now is a fantastic NFL starter. So if you feel like you have the luxury of developing an offensive lineman, letting him sit for a couple of years, I think he could be a great option.
Now, we haven't really figured out if they do end up moving on from Stefon Diggs. And this is the Steve Palazzolo plan, by the way. This is the blueprint that Steve's now laying out for us. This is going to go everywhere. It's going to go viral.
They copied Morgan Moses last year,
yeah,
so they're going to follow this.
They're going to be adhering to every single detail that you lay out for us here. If Diggs does go, then what do you do? Because you have Pop Douglas on the roster still. He, we all thought was sort of going to be the slot dynamo of the future. They have Kayshon Boutte and Kyle Williams. Those are really more X types of receivers. Matt Collins maybe is kind of like a big slot. You know, that we've seen him used almost as like a tight end at times in Josh McDaniels' offense. But are you looking for a Diggs type to sort of live in the middle of the field for Drake Maye?
Well, the draft prospect I love, especially at 31, is Omar Cooper from Indiana. So, no matter how look, you got to explore free agency for sure. I think Cooper in the back end of the first round would be great value and fit. I mean, right now he's projected to go in the second round. I think the more we hear from what the NFL likes as far as, or where there are rumors about, where he is on draft boards, I think people are going to love Omar Cooper, who has excellent ball skills. He's great after the catch, dynamic player, and he's just got a toughness to him, which reminded me of he's not small, but some of the smaller receivers historically, like the Steve Smiths, the Julian Edelmans, who just go get it and get after it and have just tenacious with the ball in the air. That's Omar Cooper, and I think he'd be a great fit. It's a lot of dependency on the young receivers. Boutte is still young. Kyle Williams is still young. So you still want to get a veteran presence in there, but if they go the draft route, I love a guy like Omar Cooper late first.
I love Cooper too, and you were there first. You were on him first. I know that, Steve. I want to give you credit there, but I watch him and I notice the physicality with which he plays. And I feel like Vrabel would really love that. It's going up and getting the football, but you'll see him block. You see him create yards after the catch and break tackles. It just feels like for sort of a blue-collar guy like Mike Vrabel, he does a lot of things that Vrabel would appreciate.
And that's what caught my eye when I first watched him last summer. He was averaging over 22 yards per reception, but it was, going up to get the ball, making big plays, and then he became more, a bigger part of that Indiana offense with Fernando Mendoza. Not even the number one necessarily, but I do think he ends up getting drafted higher than Elijah Surratt, who is making plays on the other side.
Yeah, and sort of a contested catch guy. So if you're looking for an X receiver out there, maybe Surratt is a name to know. Want to do really quickly, good idea, bad idea. Okay, we'll do a quick little rapid fire type of segment here. The Patriots trading for Max Crosby, good idea or bad idea?
Always depends on the price. But
Say it's a first rounder and a second rounder. Let's go with the Quinnen Williams comp.
First and second's a bad idea. That's a bad idea. At this point, I think there's a slight decline in Max Crosby from a top 5-6 edge rusher to maybe he's only 10-15, which is a great player. That's risky. I think, listen, here's the biggest mistake the Patriots could make this year is saying, we're a Super Bowl team, we're a player away. That's the biggest mistake they could make, is saying we're a player away. They were still in a rebuilding year, and it was great that they made the Super Bowl, but they should still treat it like it's a rebuild and that they still have more than one hole to fill.
I agree with you. Next one, though, is going to be a little lesser name, same position. Jalen Phillips. Signing Jalen Phillips in free agency, good idea, bad idea?
That's a good idea. I like Jalen Phillips. I think you can get him cheaper than giving up draft picks. It might be a pretty penny, but I think you've got the cap space, and I think that is a very good investment. The risk there is only 2 out of his 5 seasons he's played more than 800 snaps. So the injury concerns, as a player, good idea. If the injuries don't check out, you stay away from that.
Flip it over to the other side of the ball. A lot of offensive line talk here with Steve Palazzolo.
Love that.
Elijah Vera Tucker. Signing Elijah Vera Tucker. He's dealt with injury as well, but maybe has some positional flexibility. Good idea or bad idea for the Patriots?
If you can get him coming off the injury in a serious buy low, because he was a very good starter for the Jets. He's dabbled at left tackle. He could play both guard spots. I think the positional versatility is huge. So that's a good idea. Again, it'll come down to the price. Hopefully you can get that a little bit cheaper because he's coming off the triceps injury, but I think that's a good idea.
Okay, last one. This is one of their own. Paying Christian Gonzalez slightly more than what Sauce Gardner got. Good idea, bad idea?
I'm good with that. I think that's a good idea. You lock up Christian Gonzalez. I think you want to keep. They'll need to replace Carlton Davis on the other side in the next year or two. Keep Marcus Jones, have him locked up for the next couple of years. You don't want to get depleted at the cornerback position. If you have a young cornerstone like Christian Gonzalez, you keep him around.
There you have it. Some high-level thoughts there from Steve Palazzolo. Steve, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
All right, very, very, very happy to have with us now Sam Monson, 33rd Team, Check the Mic podcast with the great Steve Palazzolo as well. Make sure you're listening to that. Thanks, Sam. Thanks for being with us here.
No problem. Thanks for having me again.
Let's talk a little free agency. Let's look ahead. The Patriots, they have all kinds of cap space to play with. They're once again in the top half of the league. They have spent over the course of the last couple off seasons. I'm curious if that might get dialed back based on how they have spent their cash of late. But the first thing I wanted to ask you, before they get into the pool of available free agents, they might want to pay one of their best players, which is Christian Gonzalez. He's eligible to be extended for the first time. Would you have any reservations at all in terms of paying him at the top of the market
at that position?
No, I mean, I think the only concern you would have would be injuries, right? Like, it's a medical thing. If your doctors are happy that they've just been a run of injuries or that he's not an injury-prone player, if such a thing exists, then he's an elite caliber cornerback. His coverage skills are spectacular. I didn't love him as much as a lot of other people did coming out, but he was a sort of better athlete than he was a technician and an actual fundamental football player, but he's become that in New England. So at that point, you've got the athlete, you've got the guy with amazing movement skills, and the football player. The only concern is he's had some injuries and dealt with that. If you're happy that that's not a long-term problem, then pay the man.
Any difference to you whether or not they do it tomorrow, early, but maybe even before free agency opens, or sometimes we see these things extend into a player's on his rookie contract, his fourth season. Sometimes it's sort of right on the eve of the regular season. Does that matter to you one way or the other? Because I guess you could make the case that how they spend on him or how they're planning on spending on him could impact what they're able to do with new players coming into their program.
Yeah, I mean, I think generally the earlier you get the deal done from a team point of view, the better. The only risk in those situations is, did you pay too early and then suddenly he's not the player you thought he was? I don't think that's a real risk with Christian Gonzalez. So the earlier you get it done, you know what you're dealing with. The number is probably lower the earlier you get it done. The longer these things last, the more you kind of assume the player's got some leverage, particularly if you get into more football where he plays well again. So yeah, the earlier the better, I think, that they can get it done, because it sets the table. You know what you have left. You know the kind of money you're dealing with. You know what you have left to spend, not just now, but in the future, and plan for beyond. Get it done.
I know you're digging into guys that should be available in free agency. Let's say on that side of the ball for the Patriots potentially, because I know they need edge defending help. And we've talked a lot about Max Crosby. I don't know how you feel about Max Crosby, but are there free agents, that obviously would be a trade, are there free agents, Sam, that stick out to you that might fit their list of preferences? It was interesting. We heard from Elliott Wolf yesterday talking about speed, first step quickness, explosiveness. There was not a lot of, we're used to the Bill Belichick edge defenders in New England. You didn't hear anything about two-gapping or, stopping the run on first and second down. So are there guys that pop to mind for you that are in this free agent class that might fit that mold?
There's not too many. The guy that jumped out when, I was thinking about that list of criteria was Malcolm Kuntz, also with the Raiders, actually. He was a guy, he's not coming off the best year. It's not a huge sample size of him being amazing, but he did at least show, on his tape a while ago, that ability to be quick twitch, get a ton of pressure, really be that kind of situational designated pass rusher type, and, really apply pressure pretty consistently.
And that's not a huge name. So if they are going to be dialing back the spending to a degree, maybe I like that name, because that's, okay, we're going to attack a premium position with a guy that we think has potential, and maybe he could exceed what we end up paying him on his free agent contract, which is usually not the case, right? When you're dipping into the free agent waters, you're going to be overpaying, and you might not get the return that the money would suggest.
Right, but I think that's where the smart money is generally in the NFL, but in particular this year as well. It's not, I think teams are getting better and better at managing free agency, generally as a concept. So you're not really getting to these free agent periods where the first five guys are all pros, superstar names. You're getting resetting market money. Those deals are happening internally. It's the Christian Gonzalez's of the world. Those are the contracts that are resetting the market now. And the people that are hitting free agency, they're that mid-tier of player, which doesn't mean they're not good. It just means they're not the superstars. But you can go out there, and if you have a ton of money to spend, you can bring in a lot of players that will make a big difference to your roster. You're just not getting, the complete transformative superstar.
Okay, well, so maybe this conversation applies at the receiver position.
Definitely.
They need weapons. They might be. I think there's the potential for a move away from Stefon Diggs, given he's going to be 33 years old and he's set to make a lot of money. Any names stand out to you, whether it's a Diggs replacement, Sam, or, I know some people still feel like, hey, they need that big-bodied X receiver. Right. Drake Maye likes to throw the ball down the field. So either one of those sort of prototypes, are there names that stand out to you?
I think the receiver group this year is actually really nice. There's a lot of names I think that would be very good players on rosters. Alec Pierce is the guy everyone's going to talk about. I don't know if the Colts are going to let him hit the market, if they're going to put the franchise tag on him, or if they want to keep that for Daniel Jones and run the risk that Alec Pierce hits the market. He's the guy I think that everyone will covet. Like, that'll be the hot name if he makes the market. Just inevitable 50-yard catch every single week for the Colts. But Rashid Shaheed showed the kind of impact he could make this year for the Seahawks when they traded for him. Dude's got amazing speed, amazing quickness, again, vertical ability, and, some return game skills as well, punt return ability. And then Juwan Jennings from the 49ers. This is a guy coming out of that 49ers offense. He's one of the best blocking wide receivers in the NFL. There are coaches that love that. But also I think he's shown if you elevate him to a higher spot on your depth chart. Like, he's been buried on that 49ers depth chart behind just so many talented players. But they show that once you give him the role and you say, all right, you're the number 2 now. You're the number 1 in a given week. He can produce. He can be a high-end wide receiver for you. So I think Juwan Jennings is a perfect receiver who is, primed for a better role somewhere else now that he can be a bigger part of the offense.
That was a name I hadn't really considered all that much, but thinking about the fit, I think it could work for the Patriots. Alec Pierce, obviously, if they could get that big down-the-field type of guy, that would be fine. They do have Kayshon Boutte on a rookie contract still.
Right.
He kind of plays the same position, very different body types, but they're both ex-receivers. Mm-hmm. Kyle Williams, who's a smaller guy, I think people maybe think slot receiver when they see Kyle Williams. That's really not what he is.
Right.
So Jennings, to me, as the kind of guy who would be willing to block, that Josh McDaniels, really would value in that regard, that could end up being a nice fit for them.
And works the middle extremely well, fearless over the middle, happy to take big hits at any time to make a catch. I think he would be a great fit for them.
Okay, let's talk a little bit in terms of the potential trade market, because you made a great point earlier in terms of teams just aren't letting good players get to free agency anymore. So that means either draft or potentially trade. I mentioned Max Crosby earlier. Where do you stand on that being a good or bad move potentially for New England?
Max Crosby's a great player. I don't think I would want to trade for him just because of the cost. It's probably going to be 2 first-round draft picks and maybe some more. At this point in his career, with the injury history he's had, he's played through a lot of injuries as well. He's been this Iron Man for the Raiders. You see these pictures on his Instagram where midweek the man's knees the size of Nebraska. It's look, that's great. It's Iron Man stuff. It's gritty. It's, phenomenal for his legacy. But how many years can you do that without it taking a toll on you? I wouldn't want to be trading for that guy and saying, all right, go out there and be the Max Crosby you've been for the rest of your career, because you need to be now with what we just gave up for you.
Any players at that position? Again, a trade is hard sometimes too, because it's not like, premier pass rushers are necessarily becoming available in trades all the time. Although Jalen Phillips we saw get traded last year. So who knows? Any names that stand out to you, whether it's at that edge spot or maybe receiver? Tackle is another place that even the Patriots would acknowledge, that's a need for us right now.
Yeah, tackle's tough because, as you say, there's a shortage of them anyway. If you got a good one, you're probably not letting them go. Though, the rumors that Trent Williams might hit free agency if they can't agree on a number, that would be interesting to at least talk about from their point of view. Receiver market is kind of interesting because you've got disgruntled A.J. Brown in Philadelphia. You've got the absolute wild card that is Brandon Ayuk coming out of San Francisco, and that's a top 10 talent at receiver, albeit one who just went completely off the reservation and down tools after getting paid, which is so unusual. I can't even understand what the end game is with that. And then the really interesting name I think is Brian Thomas Jr. from Jacksonville. We're a year removed from him looking like he was going to be the next superstar wide receiver, and all of a sudden it's actually maybe he doesn't even fit in this offense, and Jacksonville might be amenable to a trade for him.
Sam, I would be remiss if I didn't give you an opportunity to look into the camera there and talk to all the Patriots fans who might have given you a hard time after your MVP vote was published by yourself. You were very open about, you voted for Justin Herbert. I believe Drake Maye was 3rd on your ballot. Mm-hmm. If you did the math, which I think you pointed out, it wasn't your vote because you would have ended up voting for Stafford if it wasn't for Herbert.
Yeah, no matter where my vote went, it wasn't enough to swing
Either way.
it. Yeah.
But now that we've seen the Super Bowl and the way that the Super Bowl played out, I feel like I have to kind of give you an opportunity to,
and
stick your finger in people's faces, digitally at least. Yeah.
My mentions got a lot quieter as the Super Bowl went. I will say that. The only point I would make is, that Super Bowl was basically a good day at the office for the Chargers offensive line this season, right? That's what Justin Herbert has been dealing with all through this season. And for him to even be posting a league average offensive production, that's the kind of value I'm talking about, right? Now, you could argue maybe Drake Maye, maybe Matthew Stafford, maybe they'd have been able to do the same thing in the same circumstance. I don't know that that's true. My point is, I think Herbert deserved recognition for that, and I think that's the most valuable player in the NFL this year.
What I said immediately when we found out who you voted for, I said, Sam's not the kind of guy who's just going to make a vote just to make a vote and try to be different, puts a ton of thought into it. I said it's time. I disagreed with your thinking, but you have to respect the man's thinking. I respect you for spending time with us here today, Sam. Thanks for being with us.
Anytime.
It's always great to talk to you, man.